And a happy Valentine's to you each and all on this Valentine's Day. Chambers, of course, makes note of Valentine's Day in his Book of Days, 1868. He says of it, Valentine's Day is now almost everywhere a much degenerated festival, the only observance of any note consisting merely of the sending of jocular, anonymous letters to parties whom one wishes to quiz, and this confined very much to the humbler classes. The approach of the day is now heralded by the appearance in the print seller's shop windows of vast numbers of missives calculated for use on this occasion, each generally consisting of a single sheet of post paper, on the first page of which is seen some ridiculous colored caricature of the male or female figure, with a few burlesque verses below. More rarely, the print is of a sentimental kind, such as a view of Hymen's altar with a pair undergoing initiation into wedded happiness before it, while Cupid flutters above and hearts transfixed with his darts decorate the corners. Maidservants and young fellows interchange such epistles with each other on the 14th of February, no doubt conceiving that the joke is amazingly good. Generally, the newspapers do not fail to record that the London postman delivered so many 100,000 more letters on that day than they do in general. Such is nearly the whole extent of the observances now peculiar to St. Valentine's Day. At no remote period it was very different. Ridiculous letters were unknown, and if letters of any kind were sent, they contained only a courteous profession of attachment from some young man to some young maiden, honeyed with a few compliments to her various perfections, and expresses of a hope that his love might meet with return. But the true, proper ceremony of St. Valentine's Day was the drawing of a kind of lottery, followed by ceremonies not much unlike what is generally called the game of forfeits. Mission, a learned traveler of the early part of the last century, gives apparently a correct account of the principal ceremonial of the day. Quote, on the eve of St. Valentine's Day, he says, the young folks in England and Scotland, by a very ancient custom, celebrate a little festival. An equal number of maids and bachelors get together. Each writes their true or some feigned name upon separate billets, which they roll up and draw by way of lots, the maids taking the men's billets and the men the maids, so that each of the young men lights upon a girl that he calls his Valentine, and each of the girls upon a young man who she calls hers. By this means each has two Valentines, but the man sticks faster to the Valentine that has fallen to him than to the Valentine to whom he is fallen. Fortune having thus divided the company into so many couples, the Valentines give balls and treats to their mistresses, wear their billets several days upon their bosoms or sleeves, and this little sport often ends in love. In that curious record of domestic life in England in the reign of Charles II, Pepys's diary, we find some notable illustrations of this old custom. It appears that married and single men were then alike liable to be chosen as a Valentine, and that a present was invariably and necessarily given to the choosing party. Mr. Pepys enters in his diary on Valentine's Day 1667, this morning came up to my wife's bedside, I being up dressing myself, little Will Mercer to be her Valentine, and brought her name written upon blue paper in gold letters, done by himself, very pretty. We were both well pleased with it. But I am also this year my wife's Valentine, and it will cost me £5, but that I must have laid out if we had not been Valentines. 2 days after, he adds, I find that Mrs. Pierce's little girl is my Valentine, she having drawn me, which I was not sorry for it, easing me of something more than I must have given to others. But here I do first observe the fashion of drawing mottos as well as names, so that Pierce, who drew my wife, did draw also a motto, and this girl drew another for me. What mine was, I forget, but my wife's was most courteous and most fair, which, as it may be used, or an anagram upon each name, might be very pretty. Unquote. Noticing soon afterwards the jewels of the celebrated Miss Stuart, who became Duchess of Richmond, Pepys says, the Duke of York, being once her Valentine, did give her a jewel of about £800, and my Lord Mandeville, her Valentine this year, a ring of about £300. These presents were undoubtedly given in order to relieve the obligation under which the being drawn as Valentines had placed the donors. In February 1668, Pepys in his diaries notes as follows, this evening my wife did with great pleasure shew me her stock of jewels, increased by the ring she hath made lately, as my Valentine's gift this year, a turkey stone set with diamonds. With this and what she had, she reckons that she hath above £155 worth of jewels of one kind or another, and I am glad of it, for it is fit the wretch should have something content herself with. The reader will understand wretch to be used as a term of endearment. Notwithstanding the practice of relieving, there seems to have been a disposition to believe that the person drawn as a Valentine had some considerable likelihood of becoming the associate of the party in wedlock. At least we may suppose that this idea would be gladly and easily arrived at, where the party so drawn was at all eligible from other considerations. There was, it appears, a prevalent notion amongst the common people that this was a day on which the birds selected their mates. They seem to have imagined that an influence was inherent in the day, which rendered in some degree binding the lot or chance by which any young youth or maid was now led to fix his attention on a person of the opposite sex. It was supposed, for instance, that the first unmarried person of the other sex whom one met on St. Valentine's morning in walking abroad was a destined wife or a destined husband. Thus Gay makes a rural dame remark, quote, "Last Valentine, the day when barines of kind their paramours with mutual chirping find, I early rose just at the break of day, before the sun had chased the stars away. I fled I went, afield I went, amid the morning clew, to milk my kine, for so should housewives do. Thee first I spied, and the first swain we see, in spite of the fortune, shall our true love be." A forward miss in the Connoisseur, a series of essays published in 1751, thus adverts to other notions which, with respect to this day, quote, "Last Friday was Valentine's Day, and the night before I got 5 bay leaves and pinned 4 of them to the 4 corners of my pillow and the 5th to the middle. And then, if I dreamt of my sweetheart, Betty said we should be married before the year was out. But to make it more sure, I boiled an egg hard and took out the yolk and filled it with salt. And when I went to bed, ate it, shell and all, without speaking or drinking after it. We also wrote our lovers' names upon bits of paper and rolled them up in clay and put them into water. And the first that rose up was to be our Valentine. Would you think it? Mr. Boston was my man. Oh, I lay abed and shut my eyes all the morning till he came to our house, for I would not have seen another man before him for all the world." Some curious customs, some not yet forgotten, that take place on Valentine's Day. May you come across he or she who will bring you great happiness in future days, the near future, if luck is most fortunately smiling upon you. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Go forth and look upon, keep eyes open for he or she on Valentine's Day morning who first crossed your way while you were afield from home. Adieu.